morning. Welcome to a new edition of Human Conversations. I am so thrilled to be here with you one more month, one more morning, one more month to discuss something that I think might be of great interest. A very, very human topic. We're going to be having some experts today. Unfortunately, one of them seems to be missing. We should have had 4 experts like we always do, but we don't really know what's going on because the 4th one is missing. We hope she can make it and she can connect while the panel is going on. I'm Jessica Lockhart. I'm the director of the International Institute of Humanology. As you know, Humanology is the new discipline that studies and explains human beings and helps them really take control of their lives and their reality. And part of the activities we organize every month is this series of human conversations. We organize a panel of experts on one human topic every month in English and one in Spanish. And we try and offer a lot of varied perspectives and opinions so you, the listener and watcher, can get a lot of information from different sources and make up your mind with your own opinion. Today, we have a unique topic, something that a lot of people have been asking me about and requesting information on these last months. Because of the world situation, well, things seem to have changed a little bit in the different countries in the world, and we wanted to discuss romance in the new normal. So without further ado, I'm not wishing to take any more time. I'm going to start very quickly introducing the different speakers to you so you can know them, and you can also, don't forget, ask them questions. You can use Messenger, you can use the chat system in Zoom, you can send us your questions and we will transfer them to the speakers so they can answer them live. But first, let me introduce the panel. Let me see if I can show them to you. I'm going to start with the person who's on my side. I have, at least on my screen, I have Carlos Esteve. Carlos is originally Spanish, although he's a true citizen of the world. He lived in many different countries. He is currently living in Panama. He used to be a doctor. Well, he's a doctor still, but he's not working as a doctor, a gynecologist, if I'm not mistaken. And he's really, really, really busy writing books right now. Is that true, Carlos? Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you, everybody.
Okay, so the next person I would like to introduce is on that side of me. Her name is, well, actually she has 2 names. I know her as Kathleen Catalano, but she also goes by the name Kathleen Pickering. Why? Well, she's a very talented and award-winning romance novel writer. She published quite a few books and has now recently published another type of book. Personal development is her new field. Kathleen, I know you are also a multifaceted and very talented woman who does tons of different things. And I think you're connecting from the US. Welcome. Anything you'd like to say, Kathleen, as a way of introduction?
Well, I'd like to say hello. I'd like to thank you for that lovely introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here too. And then the last person I'm going to be introducing is James S.O.U.L. James S.O.U.L, as you may already know, if you've been watching our Human Conversations as part of the Institute, he's our creative director. He was born in Spain, like Carlos. He's also lived in quite a few countries, 6 if I'm not mistaken, and is also currently in Panama. What are the chances of that? 7. Okay, thank you. So he's also training now to become an haute cuisine chef and is a very, very talented young man as well. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for that introduction. Wow, I couldn't even describe myself better than that. Thank you for that. I'm very excited to be participating in this roundtable discussion and getting to know the other panelists' opinions. I'm eager to start.
I'm sure we're going to get very interesting opinions today. And to not steal any more time from our audience, I would like to ask the first question. For those of you who are new to Human Conversations, the mechanics are the following. We have 3 questions that we're going to ask all our experts today. After that, we'll ask them your questions. So the first question says, COVID-19 is changing the world in many ways. One of them is how we interact with other human beings. Distancing and virtual encounters are much more prevalent today. What would you say is the most important impact that this is having on current romances? So what would you say is the most important impact that COVID-19 and what is creating is having on our current relationships? Carlos, would you like to go first?
Okay, I will start. So for me, I think a lot about this problem, but this situation is in relation with already a problem in relationships. This problem or this change was before COVID. So society is changing and very quickly these last years. So the relationship between women and men are changes a lot. This lockdown is the problem become more important, but in fact the problem was there. So now the problem for me, in my opinion, men are lost in the approach to women. They don't know what is the real role, in fact. So that change the men are very difficult for them to adapt the new situation. Women are independent. Women are more intelligent. Sometimes earn more money. So the role of the men to go to kill dinosaurs is over. So the men have to change what the relationship or the approach with women. And women, they are in a relation with men is not real in relation what men one find in woman relation. So woman now take, not all women, but a lot of women think my opinion is I earn my money, I have my independence. Why I need a man? And this I can have babies, men not. So I can do more things than men. So it's not a balanced relationship. That is the first thing. The second one is, for me, in my opinion, love in these last years, we traveled around the world. It was I tell that love mondialization, and that's for me is over. Now nobody can travel. So you can have some months ago or this last year, you can have your partner in Russia or in the United States, but you live in Europe, you take a plane and you go to see him or see her. But now, finished. So this love mondialization is over for a long time. I think now people try to have a new relationship by internet. Okay, but in normal relation, you try to hide a little part of your bad side, your dark side. But by internet, you hide more that. So in fact, the relation by internet become lies, a lot of lies. When the people start to try to know the other, you find lies, mistake. You think, okay, this woman or this man, I can give him my truth. So love is truth. It's not. It's you become. You lost your stability. So that is more. It's a very deep field. And it's not men, it's women, it's everybody. You have to have trust in your partner. So that is the second step. And that is now we can find everybody a lot of site for chat. And you write Tinder, you are writing to a woman, and in fact you are writing to a black man in India. And you fall in love with a not existent, not real person, and that is after you be more sad than be alone. So now, what's the reason to find a partner? Now everybody try to find happiness in out of us. And in my opinion, happiness is in us. It's on us. We can wait. Somebody can give you happy. That's my opinion. You to find your happiness. It's better to be with somebody, in my opinion. But we are learning to be happy alone. You have to be happy alone. You can be more happy with somebody, but we have to learn to be happy with that, and we are doing or we are thinking. And the third one is this we need now more in this change. We need to don't become in the routine, in to don't lose your relation. You need imagination. We need now in this moment of the society have more imagination to imagine new relationship, new form to relate to have relation with us. So I think now is a problem for to contact with other people. It was difficult, but it was difficult in person. Love and human love is physical. You can have virtual love, but it's physical. It's physical. We want be with a partner, man or woman. This is the same, or homosexual. Now yes, homosexual, bisexual, heterosexual, polysexual. But you need kiss the other people. You need have sex with other people. You need see things. And in this thing you have to see, you can see all the eyes of people. You can feel it. You can't fall in love with somebody, see all that some words in paper, in a chat. So what the solution, what the future for that, in my opinion, is to have more imagination. And yesterday I speak with somebody tell me now it's more sapio sexuality. So it's more less physical and more what people say, what people explain. But it's the same. Place when you speak to somebody who try to give idea, you can give idea like that. But you don't see my expression. You see only my eyes, but you don't see what I try to give you like information.
Thank you, Carlos, for that explanation. I will not comment on it because we're already a little bit behind the schedule and we want to catch up. We are very happy to announce that our fourth expert is with us. Dr. Alexandra Stockwell from the US has joined us. Welcome, Alexandra. I will introduce you as soon as I ask you the first question. Because the question was already asked, let me ask one of the other experts to answer the question. James, would you like to answer the question? Let me remind you of the question. What would you say is the most important impact COVID-19 and the whole situation is having on current romances?
Well, I would say there's a few different impacts that we've experienced with this pandemic. Following a little bit of what Carlos was saying about how we now solely rely on chatting rather than physical behaviors, we should be just chatting, but not everybody is only chatting. I think that we've also seen that we have created safe spaces for a lot of people to be able to date. Because yes, there is a lot of chatting, and yes, there are a lot of people who fake their identities, they catfish you, and you never truly know. That is true. But there are also options where you can video call a person like we are doing just now. And for example, if you were clicking with a person, you would be able to verify that that person's real through a video call. So there are certain things that can be done to avoid such catfishing. And I think that, for example, I myself, I'm a member of the LGBT community. And I have found that for members of my community, it has actually had quite a positive impact because it helps us talk. One of the things that we face on our day-to-days is the fear that we don't know if the person that we're going on a date with is transphobic or homophobic or any sort of discriminative mindset. And that can pose a lot of serious problems for us. You know, you hear on the news people getting murdered or raped or things like that by going on those dates. So by allowing us to talk, because that's the only option we truly have right now, that actually helps us because we get to know the person. If we see that the person is homophobic, there's certain things that a person might say or do that will make us realize that that person feels or thinks that way. So it actually protects us in many ways. It also helps. For example, Carlos mentioned physical affection and that we all require physical affection. I'm sorry, Carlos, I actually disagree with that. There are different sexual orientations, such as, for example, asexual, that doesn't require any physical intimacy for a relationship to exist. In fact, what they want, many times, there's different types of asexuality. But one of them, for example, is romantic asexuality, where you just want a partner that you can converse with, that you can go have dinner, that you can, things like that, but it's not the physical affection such as having sex or being able to kiss, or it's not so much that, it's more what's around it. Because yes, sex is important, but it's only one factor of a relationship that is got so much more to it. So I think that's the most important impact that our current situation has had. It has provided a space for a lot of people who felt very unsafe and insecure before to actually allow themselves to be themselves and be able to get to know other people, even if they're in different countries and even if it takes years to be able to travel again. They've met a person that they didn't before. And that's something extremely positive. So that's my answer.
Thank you so much, James, for that answer. Well, there's pros and cons to everything. Kathleen, would you like to take the floor now and give us your opinions, please?
Certainly. I think what I have seen, now I'm married, but I have a lot of friends who are still out there in the dating world. I have a son who's out there. I think the biggest thing that I have seen from COVID-19 is the sense of fear. And that, there's a mortality here and suddenly you're isolated and COVID-19's become the new chaperone to keep you apart from other people. I do know that the few people who are continue to date do things like my friend, he meets a woman down on the beach, they sit 6 feet apart from each other and they talk. And as you do get the physical interaction and everything like that, and you can watch the mannerisms and everything, but you don't get and as my son says, you don't get a chance to like hold somebody's hand or do something like that. And I think my message to everybody is, sure, this is a new way to learn. You have the internet and everything to meet everybody, but this will go away. This too shall pass. And one day we will get back to our normality. I think the beautiful thing about using the internet like we have is it's changing that environment, and that people are working from home now and they might get a little bit more isolated, but it makes a greater community because you can reach out to more people. So now, because I've met everybody in the panel, I might want to visit Panama, or I might want to go to Spain because I've met people there who are wonderful. So it will work out in the end. So I think the fear needs to go away. We have to have a lot of trust that we will evolve into something better.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that comment on hope. And I would like to very quickly introduce Dr. Alexandra Stockwell. She is connecting from the US too, and she is an intimacy and relationships expert, if I'm not mistaken. Alexandra, very quickly, let me read the question to you so you can answer it. COVID-19 is changing the world in many ways. One of them is how we interact with other human beings. Distancing and virtual encounters are much more prevalent today. What would you say is the most important impact this is having on current romances? Alexandra, what would you say?
Thank you so much. And actually, I calculated the time difference before daylight savings, and I'm guessing that what happens in Panama is different than what happens in the US. So my apologies for that. I think the negative consequences of COVID-19 are really obvious. And I want to focus on some positive aspects which I observe happening in clients and people that I know that may not be obvious to other people. And that is that previously, one of the main reasons of interacting online, using dating apps or anything comparable, was in order to meet in person, of course. And now that is not inherently the purpose. There are people who are going on, some of this has already been said, there are people who are going on dates who would never live close enough to actually go on a date, but they can go on a virtual date anyway. And as James said, people who are going on dates who wouldn't necessarily be going on dates for any other kind of reason as well. My daughter actually is in it's a Facebook, it's not a dating app, but it's a Facebook group for Jews of every flavor and variety and location. And she's gone on a date with someone who's Orthodox and very much based in Israel, who never would have gone on a date with anyone outside of his community, but during COVID-19, why not? And they had this, and even though they're within Judaism on opposite ends of the spectrum, they're also opposite political spectrum and all these things, they had a 3-hour conversation. They both knew that it would never go anywhere further because they have too many differences, but because of the context of dating virtually, they had a really amazing connection, which changed both of their perspectives on a number of different things. In my opinion, professionally, I think with COVID-19, there's this beautiful opportunity to focus on emotional intelligence. And what I mean by that is that instead of interacting online in order to be able to have sex with someone, or in order to be able to go have a nice dinner, or any of the other things that in order to find a husband, I mean, whatever it is that typically motivates someone to date, none of those things are available for people who are being really responsible in their COVID-19 behaviors. And so what that means is that there's a different purpose for the online interaction. The more someone is emotionally intelligent, and what I mean by that is that they're self-aware and interacting with someone else in the context of being self-aware, sharing how they feel, what they think, the more that is possible. There's a higher reward for being authentic and attentive now, because that's what's going to keep the relationship going. It's not in order to meet up in person. So as someone who is interviewed by various newspapers asking about relationship advice, I've gotten a lot of questions about how to keep the conversation going online, how to make it more meaningful. And whenever I talk, I really aim to give something actionable and practical for someone listening. And so I want to remind people of the basic skill of being curious, asking open-ended questions, which no answer is correct. The only reason to ask them is to get to know someone else better. So if once you ask the basic questions in an online date, to ask things like, what do you daydream about? And if there's one thing in your life that you could change, what would it be? You know, maybe other than COVID, but there's something magical that can happen, and a much more emotional intimacy becomes possible when asking open-ended questions with genuine curiosity. Because in my work, I know that for some people, it's much easier to have sex than to actually have a conversation about sex. The conversation for many people is far more confronting than the actual act. But because we don't know when we're going to actually be together physically, it means anyone who is doing online dating has an opportunity to really develop, in a way, old-fashioned parlor communication skills that then lead to deeper intimacy once people have the opportunity to be in person again in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for that answer. As our watchers and listeners can see, we have quite a variety of opinions here today. We have 4 different people from 4 completely different backgrounds giving us their insights and their understanding of the situation, which I think is fundamental and basic if we want to really grasp what it is that we can do and how to go about it. Let me ask the second question. The second question says, like HIV before, human physical contact needs to adapt to new ways and strategies. On the other hand, human beings need relationships, as has already been pointed out. So what would you recommend people to do to continue feeling connected while protecting themselves and others? Let's see, Kathleen, would you like to answer this one question first?
Okay. I think that you have to do what makes you comfortable. I notice that in the business that I'm in, groups of people are still getting together. We have live music outside so people can be comfortable and not be indoors. But some people are very comfortable to not wear masks, and other people are wearing masks. I know that there are people like my son who, in order to go to Thanksgiving dinner, went and got himself COVID tested that morning so that he could tell everybody I'm fine. But I think that, like with HIV, people would go get tested, make sure that they were clean, and that way they could present each other with certificates and say, we can have an intimate relationship. If that's what we have to do until this pandemic peters out, for lack of a better word, we should just do what makes us comfortable. And I think that's, we're all intelligent people. We all know how to stay healthy, and that's what we do. Don't put ourselves in situations that we think would be dangerous for us.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that view of the situation. Carlos, what would you say?
I think that people need relation with others. And this period is, I agree with Alexandra, with James, that's become more intellectual, more feels, and less physical. That's not bad. It's not bad if people be happy with that. So the only goal in life is to try to be happy. It's difficult, but it's the only goal, real goal in life. We try to be happy. I don't know why, what's the best way. Some people are happy in a relation, some people are happy alone, but in fact, everybody wants to be with somebody and share their lives. We are more happy when we are with somebody when we have alone. And the depression are bad things, bad feels go when the people are alone. So being with other people is essential in social life is very important in your lives. So this period, people are alone in a lot of moments. And in this lockdown, the problem was people was too much time with others. So in this lockdown, we have a big number of divorce, a big number of problems. So be too much together is not good. Be alone is not good. So we need, and the relation we was before this lockdown, it was perfect. You have your time for you, your time for be with others, but now the situation are changing. We have to adapt ourselves to this new situation. And this new situation is my relation with people. I see here in Panama, I am alone. Well, no, never alone, but I have a lot of contact with all my friends. My friends and all countries, a lot of countries, different countries in the world with different mentalities. And this contact feels me happy. I don't have any physical contact, but I feel I'm not alone. And that is the new technologies help us to be happy. But they feel, and I don't feel alone. So I think people have to adapt their goals in life or relation at the new situation. And when you can have a physical contact in some years, 2 years, I think, but we will be more happy than now, but we will appreciate more this physical contact, this discussion in direct, not by internet. But now we are showing that is possible. We can give your feels to others and give hope and give a new approach to be happy in this situation. And people miss this contact. The problem now is young have a problem with this isolation, and they cut this the government law to be together, to go to parties or to see them and do something together. But when when this situation will be over, then I think people will be more happy than now. Thank you.
There is another message of hope there. People will be happier than now. Okay. What would you say, Alexandra? What's your answer? What's your take on this?
You know, in order to have real passion and gratification and a joy-filled relationship, which includes emotional intimacy, sensual intimacy, erotic intimacy, in order to have all the best delights of relationship, it's important that we really can experience ourselves, that we respect ourselves, that we know what our desires are, that we know how we want to be touched, that we pay attention to our own experience. The kind of incredible relationship that is most appealing, that's not available if we're checked out or disconnected with ourselves. So during this time, my strong recommendation is that rather than thinking of it as HIV, which really took the edge off any kind of physical intimacy really indefinitely. This is a finite time, and it is an opportunity for anyone who wants to have great relationships to focus on their relationship with themselves in the way that I just described. And I think one of the best ways to do this is to treat yourself as a visiting dignitary. And since I know we have people listening all over, I'm just going to say the same thing more simply, which is to think of yourself as a beloved celebrity, as someone of great importance. So rather than getting dressed and doing makeup and perfume for somebody else, to set up the bedroom and get dressed in this way because you yourself are so important. It's a really different mindset than most people have when they are dating and when they're very comfortable in a long-term relationship where you don't really need to pay so much attention to the things one pays attention to early on in terms of appearance and how we say things and tone of voice and everything, but to really take time to treat yourself as someone so important, as a visiting dignitary, and to touch yourself and dress yourself and explore yourself during this time. There's nothing equivalent, of course, to being with another person, but going with what Carlos has said about the great happiness to come when we can be with other people in person again. If you've spent this time feeling centrally alive and really honoring yourself, you're priming yourself to have a much richer relationship when you do connect with other people in the future.
Thank you, Alexandra, for that answer. I would like to ask James to also give us his opinion on this topic.
Of course. I would actually like to suggest a few things that we can do. Taking on a little bit of what the other panelists have said, we must be safe. We must take precautions. We just like HIV before. We needed to protect ourselves and others in order to be able to move forward. Or if not, that pandemic was just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. So just like this one, we must protect ourselves. That is number one key. Then I would say, okay, we're asking how can we feel more connected while protecting others and ourselves. What kind of connection? There's several different types of human connection that we can experience. There's physical connection, there's emotional connection, there's intellectual connection, there can even be a soul connection for those who believe in having a soul and soulmates and things like that. So if we take that into consideration, then why are we focusing so much on the physical connection rather than all the other ones that can nurture us, can make us feel connected to people and feel as though we're building something there? So the first thing I would say is check up on those. Check up on the different types of connection that there are and see whether you can strengthen one of the other ones for now. Because like the panelists mentioned, this too shall pass. All of this is going to be over at some point. Things will get better. Everything always gets better, sooner or later, but it does. So we must stay focused in that sense. And we have to stay strong. We have to stay together in this to be able to move forward. Then I would also say, okay, we mentioned if we were to focus on the physical aspect of the physical connection, well, I do know that nowadays, if we were talking about sex, there are plenty of different sex toys that a person can use that work at a distance, that you can even connect them to your phone and you can use certain toys with your partner without having to be in the same room or building. You could even be in a different country. So if we take that into consideration, I will take up again what Carlos said about using our imagination. If we are creative with our solutions, with how we approach this new reality, I think we can come up with quite a few very interesting solutions, just like that one. Explore it. Explore your sexuality. Explore what you like, what your partner might like. Talk about topics that you might not have wanted to speak before because you were too embarrassed or you didn't feel secure enough to be able to talk about them. Talk about intimacy, what intimacy means to you and what it means to you, to the other person you're getting to know or your partner. See whether you see things eye to eye or not. You might learn a lot. You might realize that, oh wow, actually we think quite differently, or we want to work on this, or when things are better, we might want to try these things out. Or be creative. Don't limit yourself thinking that 2 + 2 is always 4, because it isn't always. Sometimes it might be 5. Sometimes it might be nothing. It might be infinity. It's what works for you. But just like I said right at the beginning, be mindful of your health and others. In order to be with somebody else, just like RuPaul says, how can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? You need to love yourself first. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for that answer. I'm going to move on to the third question. We're already starting to get questions and comments from the audience, so I will not waste any time and I will just go straight to the questions. The next question says, will COVID have a lasting impact on how people engage in romance from now on? What do you think? Alexandra, what do you think? Do you think COVID will have a lasting impact, like you said, with HIV?
You know, I don't think HIV is the best analogy or the best teacher for the lasting impact of COVID. I think more of the difference between the influenza pandemic of the 1920s and the polio pandemic, or I don't know if it's epidemic, shortly thereafter, because influenza killed many more people. It was a much more severe event. However, when it was over, it rather quickly faded from the cultural memory. Whereas polio, with people who continued to live with the various deformities caused by polio, remained in public awareness. And so even though the impact in incidence, meaning the numbers of people affected, was much smaller, it had a much longer lasting impact because we couldn't forget about it. But actually, what I really think is the best analogy to teach us about the impact of COVID is the Great Depression of 1929. Because unlike influenza or polio, I was born in 1968. I knew about polio a little bit. Now, of course, I know a lot more about the flu, but it's inspired by COVID. But the thing that really had an impact was the Great Depression of 1929. My grandparents lived through that and they were in their early 20s and learned to manage money during that time. And that affected their relationship to money management, spending, and accumulation of things truly for the rest of their lives, and had a trickle-down effect through the generations. The economic impact is something that I think will definitely influence society in the future more than the, if you will, medical aspects, because any of us who've never experienced something like this will never again believe that everything is secure. We will never have a kind of primal ease about our livelihoods. And that is something that will seep into all kinds of aspects of life, decisions about the future, choosing a career, what kind of home to live in. So yes, I think that COVID will have an impact that at least during our lifetime feels like forever, but more because of the economic impact and the cultural consequences, and less because of the medical aspects, because our cultural memory around medical matters is a lot shorter, and our cultural memory around economic matters is much longer. And even though in this conversation we're really focusing on COVID as a medical and health-related phenomenon, it of course is so much more than that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for that answer. Carlos, would you like to answer?
Yes. So I think love is generosity. So love is to, when you fall in love, you give the key of your heart to somebody. These people can going up your life, going down your life. So that is love is that. So you give a other person the possibility to have a contact with your intimity, with your feel inside. So it's thing. It's easy. Kennedy say what you can. You are say what my country can do for me. The right question is what I can do for my country. But in fact, for love, the same. People say what this approach with others can give to my life. I don't think what I can give to the life of my partner or my hypothetical partner. So this society will change after COVID. It's like I agree with Alexandra. It's an opportunity for world to be more give more importance to fields and less to physical. I agree with that. And love is not always a question of sex. You can have, I said before, you can have one sex, other sex. It's not a problem with that. Love is a feeling inside. You feel right, you feel better, if you are in love. That is true. But what we need for that, we need more complicity and less competition with us and all partners. And this society now become a fight for nothing. In fact, we will can do more together than alone or once against others. It was a historical opportunity for the world to have a common project and feel and make a better world. It was an opportunity like this. But now, if you see, every country is closed again. The country are they votes, and people don't have this point of view to make a better future. People don't think what he can give for others. That is at the opposite now. Every country, every town say no. I'm afraid against others. I'm doing right, but others not, and that is more block, more barriers, more work, and that is a pity. But I agree with Alexandra. The only way to make a good war or a better war is to fight for this against this situation. But like Kathleen said, this situation will be over at a moment or another. Society will not become like before, but a new society will born, and it's our responsibility or duty to make this new world. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Kathleen, would you like to answer because you were mentioned last?
Oh, that's okay. Actually, I love this question, and this is this is my thought. Now I might talk a little more this time. Humanity and all of us in all of our experiences, we've had a lot of blows, you know, between terrorism, between different diseases. I think that, and now we have COVID, which is, you know, we may have had these situations in our country, in our cities, but COVID has been global. And I think what I have seen is that we are all getting stronger in that we've been hit with crises and learned to deal with them and still keep our humanity and still keep our love for each other and our desire to connect. And I would like to go out on a limb here and suggest that perhaps as human beings, we are continuing to evolve. And maybe we can now take ourselves from a place of cerebral and ego and terror to soul living and understanding that we all are connected and we all have this tie to each other, and it is an act of love, and it's through our soul. And we're learning how to do it now through the internet with talking to people and learning more about each other before we get physical and it gives us having the distance of the internet gives us a chance to feel safe and explore more. But I honestly believe that as human beings, we are taking a leap, and we are going to, like Dr. Carlos says, we are going to have a new society. But I think we're going to be based more in love and trust. And we are going to start absolutely rejecting anything that hurts us. And just the idea that the COVID became a world issue overnight shows us how dangerous the world can be if we do not act as human beings instead of people who come from a place of fear, but people come from a place of love. And I think that's a good thing that we've learned from COVID, because we're learning what we do not want anymore. And we know how we want to live and how we want to interact with each other, no matter how that is. And I think that would be a great direction for us all to go in, is to just explore that and find out the goodness in each other and what talents we can bring to each other. And if we have to be a global world, let's share. And I'm done.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks a lot. James, you go for this last question too, please.
Yeah, of course, no worries. I really like the answer of all of the other panelists. I thought they're quite optimistic in a sense, because they give us a solution. They give us some hope in how we can change things for the better. Now, I might be a little bit of a pessimist in here, but I would like to think that we're going to move forward and that we are going to learn from this, that it's not going to repeat itself, that we are going to value more a human connection rather than how much money a company is making, that we are going to put more funding into education and sustainability and prevention of certain pandemics. But the reality is that I don't actually think that's going to happen. We live in a society that is extremely divided, where it seems as though part of society wants to move in one direction and the other one wants to go into the other direction. And because of that, I feel as though that's going to cause problems with the impact that COVID's going to have. Because I already see companies opening up their doors because they need their employees back because they need to earn money. And they are putting first the economic stability of the company rather than the health of its employees, for example. That shows us that we haven't truly learned anything because we're repeating the same exact mistakes over again. So I would like to be hopeful that we are going to change things, that we are going to learn, that we are going to move forward. But the reality is different. So I'm hoping, I'm talking to the public, I am talking to all of us, to all of you. We must be the change. We must make this happen. If we want positive impact to appear out of this horrible pandemic that we are currently dealing with, we must all work together in order for that to happen. We can't have a society that is divided, fighting over different little things when we have something so much bigger on top of us right now. We have to connect. We have to work together, and we have to think of the best interest of people's well-being and happiness. But everybody, not just some part of the population that benefits more than the other. Everybody has to have an equal chance. And I think that that's what we have to focus on. Not on what impact is there going to be, but what impact do we want there to be? What impact are we going to make sure that happens? So I would say that's my answer.
Thanks a lot, James, for that last answer to the three pre-planned questions. Now I'm going to introduce the whole panel together on the screen, and I'm going to start asking the questions that we got from the audience. As I explained before, you can just raise your hand or you can just answer the questions that you feel interested in. There are a few questions, though, that are targeting or that are directed to some of you in particular, and I will read them as such. Okay, the first question says, I, in particular, I'm very different from what Carlos says. I really enjoy my loneliness. Is there anything wrong with that? Or am I just antisocial? Who would like to answer that question comment that was posed by one of our watchers? There is an answer offered by James. James, maybe you could read it yourself because you gave an answer on Facebook, sure. This person's question?
Yeah, of course, no worries. So the person's talking about loneliness and whether liking to be alone makes you antisocial. I would say that not necessarily. Being alone and feeling lonely are two different terms. They're two different things. You know, a person can feel happy being alone the same way a person can feel sad being alone. You can be in a room filled with people and still you can feel lonely while being surrounded with people. Loneliness doesn't necessarily mean that you're alone as such. It's more of an emotion rather than a state of being per se. So I would say that actually a person who enjoys being on their own is actually quite a positive thing, because like we mentioned before in our roundtable discussion, one of the things that we must learn to do is love ourselves, be happy with ourselves, know how to put up with ourselves, because if we can't put up with ourselves, nobody else is going to be able to. So I would say that it's actually a very positive thing. So only if you yourself think that it is limiting you when it comes to interacting with others and when it comes to creating that human connection that we were talking about, then I would say maybe question it, and question maybe what are your rules for what it means to be alone and what it means to feel lonely. What does it mean to have a friendship for you, or have that connection? How do you establish it? How do you know for certain that that is happening? So I would say, if you think that it is an issue for yourself, check back on those things. Question your own beliefs. Question your reality and how you see the world with your lenses. So that's my answer.
Thank you, James. I know you, Alexandra, also wanted to answer.
Yeah, this question in my mind really gets at what it is to be human. And I think that's the question one asks at a Humanology institute. And in my view, what makes for a vibrant, wonderful, purposeful life is the biggest spectrum of experiencing what it is to be human. So many people often just want to focus on the happy feelings or just want to focus on the social feelings. But in fact, the degree to which we are willing to experience anger, grief, sorrow, all the what can be considered negative emotions determines how much we can experience passion, happiness, joy, connection. If we are closing down one whole aspect of humanity, we don't have as much access to really richly experience the other elements. And I think that this approach is relevant when it comes to how we feel being alone and how we feel being with others, that all of us are somewhere in that spectrum. And in order to be more alive and most embrace our humanity, we want to access as much of the spectrum as possible. And I guess the final thing I want to say about this is to draw on Aristotle, the first Westerner to talk about ethics and human behavior. And as an ancient Greek, when courage was so highly valued, what he said is, if you are a coward, don't aim to be courageous, aim to be brash, because when you overshoot, then you'll get to this new behavior. And likewise, if someone tends to be very quiet and they want to be taken more seriously, even though they're rather mousy, I will encourage them. If it feels like shouting, then their voice will be normal. If they think it's normal, they're going to still be too quiet. And likewise, it's essential to enjoy being alone. But if you want to experience more of the riches of being human, you want to also grow your capacity to enjoy being with others, and vice versa.
Thank you, Alexandra. Anybody else before I ask the next question?
I think the society need now is more emotional maturity. So now it's a question of that. In fact, all of us are speaking about the same. So it's a new society, it's a new relationship, but we need to be emotional, more stable, more balanced in us to have relation with others. And that is a question of maturity. But how is the way to keep this maturity? I don't know very well, but in fact, it's experience to have maturity. In this isolation or this change of relationships, we have lost chances to have maturity, in emotional maturity. We have make yourself maturity at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Okay, there's another question. It says, in some societies in the world, there's a growing tendency to use artificial love, like with robots and the like. Do you think that the world pandemic is contributing to this, and therefore human beings are becoming more artificially oriented?
Well,
There we go.
I think the answer is yes. And I think as someone living through politics in the United States recently, what I'm about to say is even more apparent, that when I was young and more naive, I used to think the difference between truth and falsehood and natural and artificial and similar kinds of differences were much more distinct and clear. As someone who grew up asking myself, what would I have done if I were living in Germany during the time of the Nazis? I think I, years ago, might have thought it was a much clearer question to ask, like either I would stand for the good or I wouldn't. But in fact, our much bigger challenge in humanity right now is in the gray areas, where there's truth seasoned with falsehood and something natural mixed in with artificial. I mean, if we take this all the way, we're not really hearing one another's voices. We're hearing an electronic, mixed, adjusted. We're having an oral experience which isn't as honest as being in the same room, although the difference is so subtle that it really isn't significant. That's true of what we look like too. The pixelation, it distorts us. And so this whole question, in my mind, the answer is yes, we are becoming a more artificial society, and it requires ever more refinement in discerning when something is natural and when it is artificial, when it is the truth and when it's kind of twisted and it's not quite clear if it's true or not. So when the 12 multiple intelligences were identified, kinesthetic intelligence, intellectual, I think we need a new intelligence, which I'm not naming it. This wouldn't be as, this is a little too crass, but basically a kind of discernment intelligence to be able to recognize what is true and what isn't true when it comes to information and also when it comes to sensual experiences, which is, I think, what the person asking the question was really getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Alexandra. Who else would like to answer? Yes, Carlos?
I think to make a new relation, to make this new world, we need less prejudice and more open mind. So now it's a new political correct. So it's a censure. And to make something new, we need more open and not to be to think everybody like political correct things. You can make nothing new if you have limits to make. So, in my opinion, you have this society had.
Oops.
I would like to say something too.
Yeah, Carlos froze. Carlos, hello. Okay, we can't hear you right now, Carlos. So in the meantime, while you reconnect, let's give Kathleen also the chance to answer. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. So
I see your partner.
Sorry, Carlos, sorry, you got disconnected. We couldn't hear the last part. We couldn't hear what you were saying at the end. Kathleen, I'll give you the floor in a minute. Let's Carlos finish. Yes, Carlos, can you repeat the last part, please?
I don't remember.
Sorry.
I think
the last thing that we heard was you were talking about how we must set limits, and then that's where I got disconnected.
Exactly. To make something new, we need have open mind, and we need like I tell you, imagination to make new things, new relations. But we have less prejudice to make. Society change, and this change is not, in my point of view, we come back to the past. It's very good for humanity to continue to make new things. But for that, this new limits, the new political correct is not a good thing to make a new world, in my opinion.
Thank you, Carlos. Now, yes, Kathleen, please.
Okay, I'll be as quick as I can. I think that one of the things that's been a result of COVID and a lot of the other things that have been happening is that humanity is slowly but surely but continually being isolated. And to start to have affection for an artificial intelligence that, you know, and to me, that just takes my mind, because if you have the proper artificial intelligence, it will know exactly how to interact with you and be the perfect partner. But if it's not human, oh my God, what's happened to our humanity? So does that mean that we don't have faith and trust in another human being, that we have to go to something that doesn't exist really as a living being? That terrifies me. And I think that, you know, it could be a great adventure, but oh my God, we're human. And that's why we're on this planet. And I think to evolve that way, when we should be evolving internally and growing stronger and connecting to each other soulfully. That's my platform, ma'am. That's where I come from. And that's where I will always go back. But I will always honor everybody's free will, and they can do whatever makes them happy. But I want them to stop and think that maybe there's more that they can explore inside than to keep going outside.
Thank you, Kathleen. I know you, James, also want to say something about this.
Yes, I do, of course. I would say it's neither positive nor negative, because it depends on who you ask. I would say that robotics and how we are slowly creating robots has actually helped a lot of people. It has helped a lot of people with disabilities, for example. It has helped a lot of people who maybe can't have that social connection because they have some form of psychological disorder that prevents them from having one, you know, or it's too difficult for them and they suffer rather than enjoy themselves. I would say that for those, it's helped them a lot. Or, for example, talking about the disabilities. Nowadays, they've even created robotic legs and things like that, that in some studies have shown that there are certain people that are starting to regain certain motor functions because they're using these robots. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone. You know, it's like everything. Nobody can say that nothing is exactly right or bad, because it will always be a matter of what we think personally. You ask one of those persons, one of those people, what they think. You ask them this same question, and they will tell you that that's the best thing that happened to them. That they're happy that this is advancing. That they're finally able to be themselves and have an opportunity. There's a lot of people, for example, like we mentioned before, that they want a relationship, but they want very specific types of relationship. Or the same way that if we were to explore the sexual side, we know that there are fetishes and things like that. And for example, there might be certain fetishes that a person has that they cannot explore with somebody else. It may be because of various reasons. For example, including that it may be illegal. If this is the case, and being quite controversial with my opinion with this, I suppose, is that allows a lot of people who don't want to commit a crime, who don't want to do something bad to another person, or what we would deem as bad to another person, and that's their way of being able to explore that while still being safe and keeping everybody else around them safe. So there's so many different factors to this that we have to take into consideration when deeming a sign of approval on it, that we can't really necessarily say what it is, whether it's good or bad. It's who you ask and when you ask, I would say. So just take it with a grain of salt. Just try and look at the different perspectives when it comes to this, I would say. And just be mindful of what you're doing. If you are in this world, if you're creating artificial intelligence, or if you're creating robots or whatever, what I would say, at least my own humble opinion, is take other people's considerations in mind when building this. Think, is this going to serve a positive purpose, or is it going to serve a negative purpose? How is it going to impact others? What effect is it going to have in the next years? How is it going to change other things? I would say take those things into consideration when doing it, and we will be fine, because that's what we've done with everything. So,
thank you, James. We have another question. The question says, Dr. Stockwell, you spoke about us making ourselves ready, putting makeup on, perfume, and being with ourselves in the bedroom. Are you therefore advocating sex with ourselves?
I'm advocating learning to honor our own experience at least as much as we honor someone else's. So in a simplistic way, it could look like I'm advocating sex with ourselves, and I'm certainly not against it, but I'm not talking about it instead of sex with someone else. I'm talking about really being with, honoring oneself. Like, there are many, many people, I was going to say, I mean, particularly women, who, when interacting with a partner, prioritize the partner's experience over their own. And I'm suggesting, if you want COVID to be a very positive impact in your life in subtle ways that no one knows except for you, use this time to really grow your relationship with yourself. And if it means having sex with yourself, great. But that's not fundamentally what my point is at all. My point is about honoring you and getting used to your body, your emotions, and your thoughts being the most important to you, at least as important as your partner. Let me say, I'm adjusting how I speak because I have Carlos's words in my mind about really honoring the other person. And I think that's so important. This is not basic logic. It's not either or. It's both and. And the fact is that when you are aware of and intentional with your own experience and you honor it, you actually have a lot more capacity to give to other people than if you don't. So I hope that clarifies it. And if it was just a regular old provocative question about sex, as I often receive, well, that's okay too.
Thank you, Alexandra. Anybody would like to answer something, or do I go to the next question?
Next
question. The next question is, okay, we're talking about romance and relationships. What would you tell a very young adult or teenager who's about to start having relationships? Because the world changed and we are in a situation where a lot of people have had no previous experience and the world is upside down. Any recommendations?
I'll go.
Yes.
Depending on how old this person is, I would say, as Dr. Alexandra says, make sure that you are discovering yourself in the process, and during the whole COVID thing, which I absolutely believe in my heart will be gone very soon, and it'll be something that we look back at. Be fearless, ask people questions, ask yourself questions. If you don't like what you see or you hear, trust yourself and say, this isn't for me, and keep moving on. And do everything you can to make yourself be as honest about yourself as you will be with the people that you interact with. And get out there, join clubs, get as much of an education. The more you're out there, the more you network, the more you find out what you need and what you can bring to the world and what you need to enhance yours.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. James also wants to answer, yes?
Well, it is true. It depends on the age, I would say. But, okay, this might be a little bit of an obvious one, but if you're looking to have intimate relations, the first thing I say is please, please, please don't think that what you see in porn is what really happens. With some people, yes, okay, that might be the case, but the majority of the people that those things most of the time are taken to an extreme. So that gives you a false conception of what sex actually is. So please don't think that you have to reenact all of these porn stars and all of these different positions and everything, because really, it really isn't like that. It can be, but it doesn't always have to be that way. It's good to explore, to communicate. It's good to laugh, and be able to be yourself around your person. So yeah, just trying to have fun, I would say, is the most important part when it comes to that. And just be respectful and be safe, not only for yourself, but with others as well. Take what I said before, take others people's needs and what they want into consideration when you are interacting with them.
Okay, thank you, James. Anybody else would like to answer this question? Yes, Carlos?
Okay, I think discover this new life. It's perfect. It's the best in the world. Is to feel love and to feel a new relation. That is, but I tell you have to be careful when you open your heart. So that's my advice for young is give your feel and try to understand what's happening. It's open, but at the same time, not open without think. It's a little bit new experience, but think about new experience. That is my advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Alexandra.
I just have something quick to say, and as has been mentioned, it really depends on the age of the person one is giving advice to, and it also depends on the personality. But there certainly are many young people who believe that the older generation just doesn't know what's up, what's down, what's left, and what's right. That is a natural part of human development for many people to disregard the elders at some point in adolescence. And the thing I would say is right now, you're right. We have no idea. This is new territory, and any adult who is going to give very clear instructions about exactly how it is and how it used to be in my day, that's irrelevant. We are in a new world, and young people have equal moral authority as pioneers, maybe even more than older people. So again, it depends on the personality of the person one is giving advice to, but there's a kind of an honesty about that adolescent perspective and a relevance right now, which is unique.
Thank you, Alexandra. Okay, we are done with the questions. As you can see, there were quite a lot of questions for you guys today. Before we finish, before we close this panel, I would like to give you the last chance to say something that you might want to say that you haven't said before, maybe because the questions didn't allow for whatever topic you want to bring up. So if there's anything you'd like to add before we conclude today's panel, please let me know and I will give the floor to you. Anything else you'd like to add? Yes, James.
Yeah.
Just a very, very, very brief sentence, which is just some advice. Fall in love with yourself so that you can fall in love with the world.
Okay.
It is important.
Thank you, James, for that beautiful thought. Alexandra, you also wanted to add something?
Yeah, whether it's a small personality trait or a global pandemic or the infinite number of things in between, anytime that positive change happens, it begins with awareness. We need to notice, be aware, and then from there we can take actions and implement new habits, new perspectives, new experiences. And so with COVID, there's a kind of desperation that can sometimes inspire us to want to do something right away. But in fact, in order to have a really intelligent, positive, forward motion, just being aware is the first step. And I think that we all have access to a lot of awareness of what our experience is. And I guess I want to say for this, my final words in this conversation is take that seriously. Be aware of how you feel, what you think, and then you can change from there.
Thank you, Alexandra. Carlos, you also wanted to add something?
My last word is, I think love is admiration, and be proud of your partner. Love is a treasure, and I think if you love somebody, you have to say him all days you love him, you love her, and all days be proud and tell him I'm proud of you. So love is that. For me, my definition is not a more very intellectual. It's only you have to say what do you feel, and other people be happy when they hear your words. And my opinion is that my last word is that love is a treasure, and you have to keep and to take care of all days.
Thank you, Carlos. Kathleen, anything you'd like to add?
I would. I think what I want to say is we've been, one of the things that I have seen COVID has generated was absolute fear and terror. And I think that, like Alexandra says, you have to be very aware. And you be safe, continue to love. That's what we're all about. But if you're feeling terrorized or frightened, stop and think if it's really real. Think if it's either being generated out there and it doesn't really exist, and you have to find out what really is the norm and work within there fearlessly. Be strong, be safe, be loving, be happy, be kind.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank this fantastic panel for today's very, very interesting panel on romance in the new normal. As you can see, a lot of ideas and a lot of topics came up. I think this is a great inspiration to everybody who heard us today and who will be watching the video later on. I know that, well, this is a controversial issue, something that quite a few people don't feel comfortable discussing, and that's why we brought it here. One of our goals in the International Institute of Humanology is to open the space to people who speak publicly and openly about topics that are hard to discuss, so that shyer people or people who are afraid to discuss them can hear others speak about it and make it more normal and more accessible. So I would like to thank the four of you for doing this brilliantly today. And I would like to invite everyone, you, the four of you included, of course, to our next Human Conversations. It will take place, let me check, December 19th, right before Christmas. And the topic is going to be the perks of being different. Another important topic. We will have a set of experts discussing this important topic too. And I invite you to connect live with us and to continue spreading the word about the kind of work we're trying to do at the Institute to help human beings first be aware of themselves, as was just said, get to know themselves, and then take action so they can improve their lives and their day-to-day. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It was a fantastic panel. I love having you all here. Have a great weekend and see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yes, bye. Bye.